Tonight we're going after the Pacman Nebula. The Pacman Nebula is a hydrogen emission up in the constellation of Cassiopeia. The Pacman comes above the roof of my house at about 9 o'clock. That's when it hits 26 degrees in the night sky, and that's also about the same time it gets dark. I'm set up here on my pool deck looking back to the northeast. The Pacman Nebula is going to come up right there, right behind that second ridge vent. That's about 26 degrees, and the constellation of Cassiopeia is going to come up right there. It's going to clear the house right about 9 o'clock, but that's also about when it gets dark. So I expect I'll be going all night on the Pacman Nebula. Alright, I'm going to show you what I got called up here. Got stellarium going on here in the background. Got the mount all hooked up. Whenever I get ready to do my go-to, I'll just enable the tracking and do the go-to. It's telling me the GPS is okay. That's all good. And I got PhD2 hooked up here. Now I'm going to have to do some work with this because the last time I used it, I had my planet rig on here, so the focal lengths are all wrong. So I'm going to have to change all those settings and get this scope's focal length back in there. And I'll leave that up. And then finally, I got the Astrophotography tool running. So looking at the camera tab here, you see got the ZWO ASI 1600mm Pro. That's the right camera. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and get it started cooling now. You see right now it's 29 degrees outside, and I'm going to try to cool it down to minus 15. I think we'll get there, but I'm going to get it going now. Over here on the gear tab, we got the CEM60 hooked up to Astrophotography tools, so we can use it for plate solving and such. Now again, I was not using this scope the last time, so the focal lengths are all messed up, so plate solving is not going to work unless I fix that. Notice I got the focuser, my electronic focuser hooked up here, and the filter wheel is hooked up. The only thing I don't have on this rig is an automatic camera rotator, which I do want to get at some point so I don't have to manually do it. I just don't know when that's going to be. Now go over here to the tools tab, and you'll see the focal length says 360. Well, that's because the last telescope I was using was my William Optic Z61 APO doublet, but that's not what I'm using tonight. I'm using my Celestron 8SC. Has a native focal length of 2032, but that's not going to do any good to put it in there because I got a focal reducer, a 0.63 focal reducer, and I'm going to make a guess and say 1280 is what my focal length is going to be with this focal reducer on it. So I'm going to put that in there. That's what plate solving is going to go and use now, because the plate solver will automatically pull this info in. That's why I put it here. Now it might not work because if you don't get your distance between your field flattener and the camera exactly right, then it's not going to give you a 0.63 reduction exactly. So the further off I am from having the exact distance, the further off from 1280 this is going to be. And if it gets too far off, then plate solving just is not going to work. And if you ever find yourself in that situation where you know my calculator says the focal length ought to be 1280, but it's just not plate solving, well, the first place I'd check is check the distance between your focal reducer and the sensor on your camera. And if it's not exactly the prescribed length, then guess what? You're not going to get 0.63 focal reduction. But the point is, if you don't have it exactly right, the actual focal length is going to be off from what it should be. You get it too far off, your plate solving's not going to work. Now that's the other thing I found that makes my plate solving not work. If my focus is not good, then it won't see the stars. Even though it looks like there's stars in your picture, if the focus is off, then the plate solver is not going to see those stars and it's not going to work. So those are some things you should check if plate solving is not working for you. Double check your actual focal length, not what you think it is, and then make sure that your focus is on. Then go back and try your plate solving again. Okay, this is going to work out real good. I don't know if y'all can see it, but you see the top of my scope there is pointed right at the North Star. It's 8:14 right now. It's going to get dark probably around 8:40, but the North Star just popped out, so I'm going to go ahead and do my polar alignment. I'll have the camera cooled, and then as soon as it gets dark, we'll be going on the Pacman Nebula. That assumes I can get focused and plate solving working, but we'll see. Anyhow, I got an opportunity to get going as soon as it gets dark and to run all night, I think.
Image solved.
Okay, let me show y'all something here. I'm on Arcturus. It took me a little while to get the scope focused like I knew it was going to. The only way I ended up doing it is I used my star finder, my little laser pointer star finder, to get onto Arcturus. Fortunately, I had lined those things up when I was fooling with the planets the other night, so I had a good star finder. So I put my big scope on Arcturus, and then from there I was able to start running the focus until I finally could see the star, and then from that point I was able to center it up and then get it on into focus. So my star pointer saved me tonight. Now that I got it focused, you saw I just did a plate solve, and if you look down here, it's telling me the focal length is 1292. Well, I guessed up here in the tools that it was going to be 1280. But it's 1292. So what that means is I don't have my focal reducer distance exactly right. So I'm just a little bit off on the focal length. But now that I know what it is really, I'm going to move up here and change it to what it really is. And I think that'll just make my plate solves be a little bit faster from now on. So there we are, we're on Arcturus. No particular reason other than it's the brightest star that I could see right now, and I needed a bright star to find and get focused. I'll go over to a star close to the Pacman Nebula and just do another synchronization so the mount will know a little bit better where it's at, and then from there we'll move right on over to the Pacman Nebula. Okay, I've got the Pacman Nebula called up here in Stellarium. You can see it right there. Now look over here, there's a star called the Shadar that's part of Cassiopeia. Now I happen to know that Shadar is in the Pointcraft database for stars, so I'm going to send them out right on over to Shadar. We'll sync it up there, and then it'll just be a really short hop right over to the Pacman Nebula. Okay, there it is, Shadar right there. It's under the Go-To hammer, so Go-To++. And off it goes over towards Shadar, just like we told it to do. So when it gets to Shadar, it might not land right on it. In fact, we might not even be able to see Shadar in the frame, but it doesn't matter. It's going to do a plate solve. It's going to figure out where it's at, and then it'll do an adjustment to put itself right on Shadar. That ain't good. That is not good right there. So I need to go cipher what that is. Okay, now it's gone on over there. What it was, the declination bolt.
Exposure started.
I had put it too tight, so it binded up. So I just had to loosen up the declination bolt a little bit. Then the mount was free to rotate. So it's off and running again. Alright, if you see it's 11:24, so about the time the Pacman Nebula came up over my house at 9:45. A bunch of clouds rolled in. So I just been sitting waiting. The clouds have moved out now. So it's 11:30 and I'm getting going on the first HA exposure. You can see the imaging plan over here. I'm doing 10-minute exposures, and I'm going to do 5 of HA, 5 of O3, 5 of S2, and just keep rotating through that lineup. Waiting on the first image to come in. Take a quick look at the guiding. It's not too bad, 0.88, 0.89, that's okay. Anything under 1 I'm happy with, so I'm okay with that guiding right there. All right, about 10 seconds till our first Pacman Nebula image comes in. First HA image. Here it is, a Pacman Nebula.
Exposure finished. Dithering started.
Oh boy. That don't look too good at all. That is no good. Don't know what's going on with that. Yeah. All right, here comes the next HA here in about 5 seconds. See if it's any better than the first one.
Exposure finished. Dithering started.
That's no better. Just as bad. I got to do something about these shadows in the corner, and that exposure time is just way too long. So go work on that. All right, that last exposure was a little better, but I think I figured out what's going on here. That was a 5-minute exposure. You can see it's not quite as washed out, but it's no good. But here's the problem. Notice that over here in the film plan it says HA, but over here my filter says it's still on luminance. So I think my filter didn't change for whatever reason. My filter wheel is connected. Okay, bad news. I'm going to have to take it all apart. It's not going to be easy fix like I thought. So after I take it apart, unjam my filter wheel, put it back together again. Now I'm going to have focus issues. I'm going to have to go back through all of that. So I'm going to go and get that done, and I'll be back. It's now 11:53. If I'm back inside of an hour, I'll be happy about that. So I'll be back when my image train is fixed and I've unfreed my filter wheel. Okay, I'm back with you after all that. I had to warm the camera, take it apart. Now I'm cooling the camera back down. You see it's down to 1.5. We're going back to minus 15 degrees. So while it's cooling, I thought I would show you. See, right now the filter wheel is on luminance. I like to use luminance for plate solving and stuff. But if I go over here to the gear tab, down here to the filter wheel, I'll call up HA.
Filter change.
Watch it right there. See, it's moving, and there it is, HA. So the filter wheel's working now. And I feel kind of like an idiot that I didn't notice it before, that it was stuck on luminance, and that's why I was getting those stupid bad pictures before. Okay, here was my first attempt at a plate solving picture after I got it all put back together. You see how the stars look like donuts? Got the hole in the middle of the star. That's a focus issue. So we knew it was going to be out of focus, but it's not too bad. At least it's good enough so that I can see their stars out there, and I know what to do to focus it. Okay, after all that, we're back on target shooting. And if you notice, the time is 00:49, so I beat my hour goal by 4 minutes. So I'm okay with that. Okay, we're back about 10 seconds before our 10-minute exposure comes in. See if we got our problems fixed.
Exposure finished. Dithering started.
Oh yeah, that looks a whole lot better. When you take a look at this one, and then here's the first one that came in. You see a world of difference there. Everything is wrong with this one here. It's too light, it's washed out, shadows at the corners, and of course we know part of that's because it was stuck on the luminance filter. And then over to the HA one, you can actually see the Pac-Man image here now, and the shadows are gone out of those corners, so changing the depth the prism went ahead and fixed those shadows in the corner. So I'm okay with this. So this is looking pretty good now. I'll let it run and I'll come back and show you the first 10-minute OIII when I get that. About 10 seconds until the first OIII image comes in.
Exposure finished. Dithering started.
Okay, that's not too washed out. Not as much signal as I was expecting, but I can see some there, and it's not all washed out like I was afraid it was going to be. Still a little bit of noise from light pollution.
Dithering finished. Exposure
okay.
started.
I think it's a good trade-off. It's been almost a month since I had a night without clouds that I could even set up my scope. So I was really looking forward to getting a whole night of imaging in, and I regret all those problems I had up front. But you know, every time you change your rig around, you're going to have to work through those problems to get it all going again.